In this video I answer two questions from NAG. One is having a luxurious home and the capital gains tax ramifications, and the other part is buying land, building your own home and the saving on the stamp duty, land tax, and how that works. Watch the video to find out. So the first part of the question, in terms of the house should be luxurious or expensive as we can afford, that's really a personal choice. So just to share with you, just talking to somebody before I started recording this video, and they've got a home which is worth £3 million, all cashed up, and got talking about what they do, and they're in obviously the world of property, and their income is pretty low in terms of their disposable income requirement, because their house is cashed up. They don't spend much money elsewhere, go on holiday a couple of times a year, don't have a lavish lifestyle, but they wanted a big house. Then on the other side, you know, I see people who have a small or a reasonably small home. It's all relative, by the way, but just say a standard 3-bedroom house, and are doing exceptionally well, but like expensive cars or have an expensive holiday or like going on expensive trips out. So it all depends. So if you want to have an expensive house or a big house, and that's an aim and ambition and makes you happy or makes you feel fulfilled, absolutely go for it. In terms of the low interest, you're absolutely right there, because if you're occupying the house, then you'll get some very good deals and the interest will be lower than if you have buy-to-let property. So that's obviously is a good thing. In terms of capital gains tax, which you've asked, if you live in the property since you've owned it, then that's covered by principal private residence relief. So when you sell it, you don't have to pay capital gains tax. If you live in it some of the time, and say some of the time it's been empty or been rented out, then you'll get relief for the time that you've occupied the property, plus the last 9 months. So the last 9 months are deemed occupation, even if you didn't live in them, in that property for the last 9 months, plus the period that you've lived in the property. So that is covered by your principal private residence relief, and the rest of the periods whenever you had the property empty or was rented out, you would have to pay capital gains tax, and that would be as a percentage. So let's just say you've had the property for 120 months, you lived in the property for 80 months, and that includes, and then on top of that you get the last 9 months. So 89 months would be tax free, and the balance would be taxable. So you work at the taxable gain, and then you pay tax on that percentage. So let's just say, let's keep it 80 months and 40 months. So that would be 1/3 where the property was let's say rented out. So you work at the gain, and one third of that gain is taxable and 2/3 isn't, because it's covered by your PPR. So I hope that part helps there, NAG. Then your second part is about buying a house with land and then building on it, and is that a good way of doing it? And you've asked about SDLT. So yes, if you buy land, the SDLT will be lower than if you buy a land with a house on it, because you've got the additional 3% to pay, and when you buy land you pay non-residential rates of stamp duty, land tax. Sometimes people call that commercial rates, whereas if you buy a property as a residential property, then you've got to pay residential rates, and that usually works out to be higher than if you already own other property. You may have to pay the additional 3% on buying your home, which means that the SDLT could be quite high. Now of course, if you have your own home and you're selling that and then you buy this house, then you don't have to pay the additional 3%. If you buy your new house but sell the existing one that you occupy right now as your home in the next 3 years, then you pay the 3%, but you can get that back. It all depends on your situation and circumstances. But to answer your question, land, generally speaking, the SDLT will be lower. Then you build the house. Once you've built the house, of course there's work involved in that, there's risk involved in that, there's capital involved in that. You may need to get a loan. You'll have to work with a builder or a contractor, so you've got all that rigmarole. The land may not have planning, so you'll have to apply for planning, which is a further risk, or you might buy it with planning, which means you'll have to pay more for that piece of land. But once you've built it, there'll be some gain and uplift in value which although you're not selling the house, that goes to you in terms of equity. Whereas if you were to buy a house, so let's run through an example. In fact, you buy a house, a piece of land, let's say 1 acre of land for 250 grand, and it cost you £750,000 to build it, including any loan interest, so all in £1 million, and let's say it's worth £1.3 million. That £300,000 is extra equity for you. You can then refinance that house and pay off the loan that you got to buy the land, possibly, and to I say possibly because you may have bought it outright in cash, and to repay the loan for building the house. So on 1.3 million, if you want to raise say 80%, 85%, you could do that. You could even do 90%, and that helps you. Whereas if somebody else builds the house and you buy it, well, it's cost them £1 million all in, using my example, but they're going to sell it to you for £1.3 million because that's the market value. So you're paying that £300,000 extra, which you would save if you build a house yourself. So those are some of the things, Nag, that you ought to be thinking about when you're looking at building a house. Now, like I said, the major risk for you is working with contractors and making sure the house gets built on time and to the standard that you want it. But as long as you're comfortable with that, go for it. It's going to be an additional project for you to manage. You're going to learn lots, and you'll be able to create a house that works for you the way that you want it to work for you.